everyone, I am Nandita Gupta, and we are here today to celebrate the International Day of People with Disabilities. And the theme this year was focused on innovation and transformative solutions that lead to accessibility and inclusion. I'm really excited to be here with Jenny, and I'm here signing in from my home office. I am a PM on the Accessibility Insights team, and I'm wearing a blue shirt and I have long black hair with glasses. And thank you so much again, Jenny, for tuning in with us today. And we look forward to hearing your insights.
Oh, it's Nandita, it's always good to spend time with you. So I'm joining from my Redmond office here in Seattle. It's kind of getting dark outside, so you can see that in the back distance, and it's cold. So I'm wearing my green fuzzy sweater. Such is the joy. But it's good to be with you again, and let's get into it.
I love it. Thank you, Jenny. As we're thinking about the theme, and I know the day is over, right? But in many ways, it's been a beginning of the next year where we take all that energy and move forward. So, with the theme being around, transformative solutions for inclusive development, what are your thoughts on, the role of innovation in really fueling a more accessible and equitable world? What does that mean to you?
I think inclusion of people with disabilities leads to innovation, and innovation is key if we're going to change some of the paradigms that exist. We frame that as the disability divide, and that's been around for a long time, and will likely be around, sadly, long after I'm not here, and then the next generation, because I think it's going to take a fueling of innovation to really change some of those societal thinking, some of the reality that we live in an inaccessible world that's not designed for people with disabilities, but leaning on technology and other programs and services that can really help to nudge that positively in the right way. So I actually think it's crucial that we think a little bit outside the box of the norms and just day-to-day reality if we're going to adjust some of that thinking.
I love that. I mean, just get rid of that box, right? Like, let's get outside the box and tackle that disability divide together. And everything you said just made me think about, the slogan I've heard with, nothing about us without us, right? Really bringing everyone together to tackle that disability divide. And, I'm curious to hear your thoughts and perspectives. And, how does that disability perspective tie into innovation?
Well, you're doing it every day, Nandi. I mean, that's some of the joy of having you here. But having disabled people with disabilities at the core and the fabric of what we do is crucial. Quite bluntly, I don't think we would have some of the features and products we have today if it wasn't for the insights of people sharing lived experience, of really just fueling engineers and developers with, no, don't do it that way, that won't work, or that won't benefit the person with a disability, that will benefit the wrong people. Do it this way instead. If I think about the new team sign language view, that was really fueled by Chris Sano and many others that he leaned on, both internal and external to the company. Folks who are deaf, whose sign language is their first language, who wanted to see a better visible way of consistently following interpreters and folks using sign language using Teams. Really good features. I'm using them every day. I'm deaf, but I clearly speak for myself. But I use an ASL interpreter, and it's been just blissful to sit back and be able to see that residual view and content and chat and engage as I want to. In that, again, all fueled by the right insights. So I think we all know examples where that doesn't happen well. And I think we should really give light to those where it's done right. And that's one of them.
Totally. I think you and I were also chatting about this research study that we came across. I know we use that a lot when we are advocating for accessibility with accessibility insights, and to say that, hey, use this early on and often, because I think the numbers, if I remember correctly, was something like 57%. So if you really have the perspectives of people with disabilities in your product, 57% of those products will benefit everyone. They'll benefit even people without disabilities. So that's really, really powerful.
Yeah, and I love that you pulled this study out, and I think it's really important to wallow in the fact that this is a study that came from Forrester almost 20 years ago, 2003. So just think about that. That study highlighted the benefits for abled versus disabled 20 years ago, and we're still pushing on those same statistics. They're still as relevant today as they were then. And I think, yeah, there's so many examples in history where we can point to that just being the case, whether it's talking books, which, I mean, good grief, look how amazing companies like Audible have gone with that. And that's not just for blind and low vision, for whom they were intended, captioning and how those benefit English as second language, magnetic zips, which is just the most best thing ever. And so I think that plays out on digital technology today. If I think about some of the features that exist, like hand raise, that was done by a neurodiverse engineer, putting in a feature that made it socially, broke down those social stereotypes of when do I interrupt to ask a question? Well, you raise your hand, but beneficial for all. And now we've queued them so you can see who put their hand up first, and other things. So I think the same methodology and thinking and applies now, but we still have to educate people on that. There are too many people, too many companies that are still focused on why should I invest in accessibility, and I'd love for that question to be topsy-turvy. Why should you not invest in accessibility?
That's very powerful. And as you were talking about the raise hand, it made me also think of, when we talk about inclusion and inclusive design, this notion of, it goes beyond disability, right? It goes to race, it goes to culture, it goes to gender. I mean, the number of times I've been interrupted in a meeting being a woman, and vice versa, not knowing when I should speak up, I think that's definitely broken down barriers for me from a very different lens. And, we talk about the other awesome work here at Microsoft, right? I had a very emotional moment about a couple months ago when I visited the Inclusive Tech Lab. I have really small hands and I've always had trouble finding a mouse that fits me. And I remember walking up to this table which had the adapted accessories, and I was like, wait a second, I can customize this? Like, you built this for me? Like, you thought about me and you built this for me? And that's powerful, right? And when we're thinking about building these products for everyone, like, why would you leave people out, right? Innovate with everyone. And so where we're going, right, with all of this, you mentioned captioning, you mentioned raise hands, all the features, right? There's always something exciting coming up. What is your vision for the future with Microsoft, as it relates to innovation and people with disabilities?
I love that you mentioned the mouse, and you found that to be good for you. It's such. I'm sitting here. I was giggling because I was playing just before this with the, the button, which is so good. And I was messing with the joystick and how it's these things. How technology can be personalized, can be adaptive, can work for you in any setting. That is really the power of accessibility, and how it can be something that also ebbs and flows with your day, with your energy in the morning versus the afternoon. My mum reminds me, arthritis is a disability, and in the morning she's great, in the afternoon, ugh. So I think technology should be personal. It should be something that you can adapt to your environment, adapt to your needs. It should be easy to find, easy to use, discoverable, and affordable. And I think if we can find that magical solution that accessibility is so grounded to, I think in many ways more than any other discipline, then you don't just again empower disabled people where that's really needed, but you also disable everyone to just be more productive with technology. And if we've learned anything over the last few years, it's that technology can be a positive force. It powered us through a pandemic. It's powered us through many situations in the last few years, but it can also be a negative force if it's not adaptive to you and it doesn't work for your needs. So I think we help to bridge that gap. But there is a magic here, and I think the future is where that magic just becomes standard in everything that we do.
I love that. So what I'm hearing is the future is accessible, the future is inclusive, and the future is affordable. So that's powerful because with the adaptive accessories, you can just print them yourself and you don't have to wait to pay thousands of dollars to get that at your fingertips. So that's so powerful. Like access is not something a lot of people talk about. So that's very exciting to hear that as part of your vision, for sure.
I do think it's a crucial part of how accessibility moves forward. A lot of our apps are free, like Seeing AI. A lot of accessibility is just embedded as part of anything that we do, like Windows 11 or Microsoft 365. And when you have hardware where there is cost, it's figuring out the right solution that works for you. And that means for us, that meant that we worked with a third party called Shapeways to be able to 3D print if you want a company to do it for you, or for the first time in any Microsoft product, we put the CAD files online and you can 3D print your own tail to your mouse. So yes, it is a core value for us, because I think if we're going to really impact that disability divide, not just here in the States, not just in countries like US and Canada, but in countries like Africa and continents like Africa and in other parts of the world, then we've got to really lean on how we can make that just easier to find, easier to use. And get it to people who are really going to benefit.
Thank you, Jenny, for sharing that. And it's also recognizing that not all companies might be in the same place, right? In terms of resources, in terms of what they're able to provide in terms of access. So when we just think about different companies globally, with maybe more resources, less resources, what can companies do to really push the needle forward when it comes to innovation with accessibility?
I think for any company, it's really important to make sure that you are listening to the disabled voice. I do remember way back in the day, I've had the privilege of being at Microsoft 18 years, so a long time. But I do remember back in the dark ages, someone saying to me, well, everything's fine in accessibility. We're not getting any complaints from disabled people. And I do remember, looking at them and saying, are you listening? And of course we are. But they were listening to the voice that shouted the loudest and the most volume, not to the voice that was giving the most intelligent feedback, which was the disabled voice. And we learned that with the Disability Answer Desk when we opened that, which was a very small pilot way back when, 10 years ago now. And we take around 13 to 15,000 calls a month from disabled employees and customers, telling us ideas, feedback, problems. I've got this disability, what can I do? And we hear what works and what doesn't. So the first thing is listen, ask the questions. Did that work for you? What would you want to see more of, less of? Ask those questions of your customers and employees and really listen, create that safe environment where people can feel psychologically safe to tell you. And that takes time and that takes consistent focus. And one of the biggest things you can do is hire some great talent. In fact, Joyce Bender would say, hire someone. And she would say it very loudly, and we love her for that. But it's a really important point. Bring on disabled individuals into your company, into your environment, or work with a local nonprofit, or work with an advocacy group and pay them for their time to give you input. Hey, how is my physical accessibility? Could you order through my website? Get their feedback and then act on it. Whatever size of company you are, you can take that step and get that feedback in.
That's powerful, Jenny. I mean, what you're saying is just be curious, right? Be curious and care. Just get out there, do something, right? I think that's again, I see this from at least my small world and sphere with the testing, but people are so scared of starting something because they're like, oh, it looks like a big problem to tackle, and I don't want to get into it, or I'm too scared of getting into it. So if you could give, maybe it's like the one thing, right? Like, what is the one thing when you get off this call, go do? If they could just go do one actionable thing, what would that be for you?
I love how you summarize things, Nandita. I would say, go get educated. Spend a few minutes taking a course, right? We've got a virtual one online, I think aka.ms/accessibility fundamentals. Doesn't matter whether you're an employee, a customer, just curious, go get educated on how to talk, be confident, engage, and just talk about disability. And feel really strong in how you do that, and learn some of those guiding principles. So the next time you meet someone with a disability, you know what to do. It's not hard, by the way. Say hi, and be curious, and but learn some of those parameters. And I say that's the most important thing you can do. Go and get curious on the websites. Every single tech company has an amazing website with some of the great features, programs, services, grants. There's a wealth of insight out there. So go get educated on what's going on. You'll find there's an incredible community out there that is driving an amazing conversation on all of these topics and more.
I love that. And it's a very, very warm community. I mean, everyone's going to welcome you with open arms. So just be vulnerable, just walk in. I love that. And kind of switching gears a little bit and looking at the other side of the coin, right? Going from companies to employees, and all those innovators out there who are trying to tap into the knowledge and this transformation that's going on within the space. What advice would you have for them, those employees who are trying to push for accessibility in this disability advocacy space?
Well, hold up, I got to turn that one back on you. What advice would you give as an innovator doing, getting involved in all of our company hackathons? And you came into the company with this wealth of ideas. So, and I know you're.
Oops, Jenny, you got muted.
I hit my space bar. I know it's a great shortcut, but terribly annoying. What advice would you give, Nandita?
Oh my gosh. I still remember the first time we spoke, actually, and I remember asking you that, hey, what would I do as someone new to Microsoft and someone just trying to learn and understand? And I think one thing you told me was just be persistent. And I think that's something I've tried, is like just try different things. Like, don't let one or two failures or what have you, whatever that number is, like stop you. And I think that's been incredible with my journey with Microsoft, because there's things you try that don't work, and that's okay. But the community is so warm and amazing, where you just be curious and you just want to learn, and you find the small ways of creating impact. As you mentioned, the hackathon, where that's been a great way to learn and experience, and to just joining the different employee resource groups, to just connecting with different people. And in many ways, I feel that's kind of led me into my career here at Accessibility, where you speak to one person who then speaks to someone else who speaks to someone else, and you're like, oh wait, okay, this is how I ended up here. So that was one thing for me, was persistence, for sure.
I love that. I think, I think it's always good to try new ideas, take the feedback, and then keep going, right? Because if one avenue doesn't work, go down the other one. I think other with new folks coming in, and a lot of our company here are new employees coming in with great ideas, not your enthusiasm. They can take a leaf from your book. But I would also say to find that community, I think, is a really important thing, right? I think when you get involved in the ERG, you get involved in the accessibility groups, you find others that have similar thinking, similar ideas. Actually, often with our hackathons, we end up marrying teams and people that we see just coming into the hackathon with very similar ideation, and we want to connect them up so they can bounce ideas off. I think that's a really important part. But most importantly, you find others that have the same lived experience, that have learned a lot of what works and what doesn't, and can share some of that advice of what works for them, and that helps you to be quicker off the bat as well. So I think finding community as well as your persistence is a really big deal.
I love that. Thank you, Jenny. Yeah, community is so powerful. Like, just bring the people together. Because at least for me, at the end of the day, what we do, it's for people, right? We're trying to make this more accessible and inclusive for people. Um, Thinking about, I guess, this year moving forward, and in terms of the energy and things you want to take forward, what is top of mind for you going into next year?
Going into next year, I think we've had a ton of energy this year on how we create environments like the Inclusive Lab, create technologies like the mouse, and create programs that really connect us and drive to scale, like the Neurodiversity Career Connector. And I think it's starting to tackle some of those bigger challenges that exist in the accessibility world. We were really, really proud to be part of the Speech Accessibility Program, which is a coalition of 5 companies, 5 tech companies, big ones, Apple, Google, Meta, Amazon, Microsoft, coming together to work to build a better repository of impacted speech that will fuel speech recognition advancement. It's so needed, but it needs us working together. The neurodiversity program works with 30+ companies, sharing resumes with folks in agreement and approval, again, so we can help to get neurodiverse folks into the right jobs that work for them. So I think it is about continuing to collaborate, to think big, and go after some of these hairy ones that are going to need a little bit more time and investment to really power accessibility that's going to last a long time.
Exciting, super exciting to see that happen. And it was wonderful to hear from you and all your thoughts today. And thank you all for joining us here today.
And thank you, Nandita, for being utterly brilliant as always. And just, we love working with you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Jenny. Thank you for your kind words.
Take care, folks.